All right, we're recording. I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, very good. All right, last week we looked at some of the actual examples. I'm sort of catching up here. Go back to slide 119. That was our last one last week. Okay, so that was the end. Okay, so we're just in the middle. We were going through the Hebrew calendar, and we have found examples of, we've already before this been through the priest calendar and the sacred round calendar. Now we're going through Tabernacle. So the last slide we did, 119, was showing how on the last time that Moses was up on the mountain at the end of his 120 days, it was in fact Feast of Tabernacles on the Hebrew calendar. And that's just by counting 3 sets of 40 days in a row. And just as a review, on the sacred round, 40 days is one number. So it started on 1 jaguar. 40 days later was 2 jaguar, then 3 jaguar, and then 4 jaguar. So just counting those days brings you to Tabernacle. So this again is just an example of how everything ties together, how these big events happen on several sacred calendars. Okay, let's go on to slide 120 then to start today. So now this is another really important one. They make a big deal in the Old Testament and in Exodus about the day on which the tabernacle was raised. It's Sunday, the 13th of March, 1461 BC. They left, the Exodus was in 1462 BC on the 14th or the 15th day of Nisan. So this is almost a full year later that it took them to build the tabernacle, get it all ready. And actually, I don't show it here, but 8 days before this, or we would say 1 week before this, Aaron was anointed. And the tabernacle was anointed. And it turns out that happened on the day on which Mary anointed Jesus, one week before the resurrection. And the day on which the tabernacle is raised, and the tabernacle is like a body. They refer to your body as your tabernacle. This tabernacle is symbolic of the body of Christ. It was anointed on the same day he was, and this tabernacle is raised on 1 Nisan. And it's really clever because they wanted 1 Nisan, they wanted New Year, they wanted the one symbolism. And so they got 1 Nisan, New Year's Day. So it's a 1, like Sunday is the first day of the week. It's a 1. But they also wanted the 8th day symbolism. So Aaron was anointed and the tabernacle were both anointed 8 days before. So in another way of counting, the tabernacle was raised on the 8th day. 8th day since his anointing, and Christ was born on the 8th day. And the book of Barnabas explains that really the reason we worship on the first day of the week, it's really the 8th day of the week we worship on. And he says that's because the earth will last 7,000 years. And the 7,000 years is like the 7th day of the week. But he said it's the 8,000 years when the earth will, he doesn't say die, but pass away, something like pass away and be resurrected. The earth will be resurrected on the 8th day. Christ was resurrected on the 8th day, but it turns out the 8th day of the week is the first day. That's a lot in this one slide, isn't there? Also, all we know about now, it's going to turn out to be on the star calendars. It'll be on all these calendars, but for what we know now, it's also on the day that represents the resurrection. It's called 1 Arise on the priest calendar, which is the name of that Sunday morning. It's Saturday afternoon, Sunday morning. Okay, let's move on. That's a long time on one slide, but that's, I think, why you signed up for the class. You could read the slides by yourself, but you wouldn't have gotten all of that good stuff. So I'm trying to make this worth your while and yet go fast. So the next slide, the exact date of revealing Deuteronomy is written. It's right in the book, Deuteronomy 1 and 3. It says it's the first day of the 11th month, which is now called Shabbat. The Jews really changed all the B's to V, so they call it Shabbat, but that's okay. Saturday, just 2nd of January. It's one Lord on the Venus calendar. That's really important. And it's one witness on the priest calendar, and it's on 7 other holy days. I mean, it's an amazing day, but all we'll talk about now is the ones we've studied. So it's the first day of the 11th month. Remember, the first day of each month is holy. So this is not a major holy day, but it's in blue, meaning a minor holy day. And okay, next slide, 122. All right, now we're up to how long Moses lived. And he says, he starts the book of Deuteronomy, and then about well into it, well, Deuteronomy 31 and 2, I've got the reference there. He says, today I am exactly 120 years old. And there's a lot of the book that comes after that. I forget how many chapters Deuteronomy has, but it's got, you know, another 10 or 12 or something. And if you read carefully, you'll find everything that happens after he says that is on the same day. He gives quite a bit more revelation, and then the Lord tells him to go up on the mountain and to die on the mountain alone. And several times, if you read it carefully, it says, and on that same day, this happened and that happened. So I could only conclude that his day of, he lived exactly. There's been a question of whether he was translated or whether he died. The scriptures say died. And that's in the revelation to him, not just somebody writing it after him. What God told him, go up and you will die. So I have trouble arguing with that. But it's been an LDS tradition that he was translated. It's hard to pin that down exactly where that came from. It may be true. I don't know. But right now I mostly stick with the scriptures and say he died. So, oh, and it's on one creation. It's 13 days. See, it's 14. The 14th is 13 days after the first day, right? Deuteronomy started on the first day. Deuteronomy was on one Lord and on Venus, and 13 days after one Lord is one creation. So it's the beginning of a Venus cycle. It's on one temple on the sacred round, which has to do with your body and birth, and this is like a birth going the next. Anyway, all of this stuff has perfect timing. Let's do the next slide. 123. Okay, now, see, we're working backwards. We follow Jubilees backwards to get back to Moses and the Exodus. Now we've got his death date to the very day. So now we can count back 120 years, and Moses is born on 14 Shabbat in 120 years earlier. We're going to work our way all the way back to Adam, carefully from biblical references as much as possible. So that's where I get that birthday from, and it turns out it was also one Lord, Venus. See, remember, 40 years is a Venus cycle. So 80 years is kind of a Venus cycle, and 120 years is a Venus cycle. So Deuteronomy was given on one Lord. Venus-wise, it's 120 years in Venus cycles. before Deuteronomy, and it's 13 days different. See those, it's a few days different, but it's still done, it's done so cleverly. So he's born on one flower. And so now we're back to the beginning of Moses. Now we can look up Aaron and his sister Miriam. Let's go to the nice slide 124. Okay, Aaron, his brother. Now we'll do his death. Aaron is one of the few people for whom the precise day of his death is given. Moses was one, if you read it really carefully. But you don't have to read Numbers 33, the reference given, 33, 38, 39 carefully. It just says, Aaron died at the age of 123 on this day, the first day of the 5th month, in the year of the Exodus, in the 40th year of the Exodus. That's during the 40th year. That's not after 40 years are completed. So it's in 1423 BC, on Friday, July 10th. And it's on a holy day on the sacred round, nothing incredibly special. It's on 7 death on a couple. It'll turn out to be really wonderful on star calendars and others when we get there. But right now, we're doing the best we can. And one op is a holy day. And by the way, one ob it's a priest day all the way. I believe it'll turn out that Melchizedek is born on one ob. Joseph Smith Sr., the father of the prophet Joseph, Father Smith, he's born on one ob, as I recall. I'm pretty sure of that. It might be that he died, but I'm pretty sure it's his birth is on one ob. And so it's a priest kind of a date, and it's perfect for Aaron the priest. All right, so now we got his death date. Now let's go to slide 125. And now Aaron, Moses' brother in Aaronic priesthood, was born. Now, we were just told it was 123 years for him. We're not told his birth date. So some research was required for this. But this is the date I propose. I can't prove it right off. But it's gonna tie in to enough other dates that I'm confident in it. And it's on one eagle, which again is it's not only a priesthood. It's a day. Adam's born on one eagle. Enoch is born on one eagle. A lot of key players in the priesthood are on one eagle. So it's just a good day that way. And it's on one quickening on the Venus calendar. Next slide, 126. Now, Miriam is a gem. She is, now see, here's one. She's born on one ob. So see, she's the same as her brother. So same as her brother died. And there are often those links between siblings and their parents. But she is something else on her birthday. She's born on one birth, Venus, and see, that's just not a holy day like one quickening or one, Lord or one creation. One birth symbolizes birth. She's the one that gets the Venus cycle on the birthday, and one wind, which represents the spirit. It will turn out that or maybe we already saw that. I've forgotten now what we've done. If we haven't, it'll turn out that the parting of the Red Sea was done on one birth and one wind. And so, and the 40 years began and ended on one birth. The 40 years, one birth to one birth. So anyway, her birthday is holy on like 9 or 10 calendars. And she's symbolic of Mary. Miriam is, how do you say Mary in Hebrew? Mary is the Greek version. And she ties to Mary very closely, and we'll see that as we learn more as we go on. Okay, a couple more slides, 127. Okay, now we're going to, this is the big leap. I guess we already had done the Passover, I mean the Red Sea and 40 days after at the end. Because now we went back to the beginning. Now, this is a big key to going all the way back to Adam. And this is where there's controversy between scholars. The Exodus began exactly 430 years after the sojourn life of Jacob. Israel began on Passover, the 20th of March, 1892 BC, one birth and one temple. The day for, those are both the days for birth. Birth is birth and temple is birth. Now, let me add some verbiage to that. This is from Exodus chapter 12, verse around 42, 43. And it says there that they're just going to have the Exodus. They're just going to leave. And it says, the sojourn of Israel in Egypt was 430 years, and they left on the self-same day on that it started. So now you're left with, how long were they in Egypt? In the one place, Abraham's given a prophecy that his descendants would be 400 years in bondage. Oh, this is close for those that just want one place accuracy. 430. When you actually add up the years that they're in Egypt, it's not 430, it's 300. And if they try to make it 430, then you get all messed up. You've got to put your anchor points in something that's really solid. In this case, you have to be able to understand what that scripture said. When it talked about sojourn, it's talking about life. This life is a sojourn. And when it's talking about Israel, Israel is Jacob. And I will say that the correct interpretation of that scripture, it's not original with me, somebody else figured it out, but I will say it's true. And I'm staking this whole chronology on it. That verse is telling you that the time of the Exodus on a Passover day was 430 years after the life of Jacob began, the sojourn of Israel. And that Jacob was born on Passover, the 15th of Nisan on Hebrew calendar. And if you go back 430 years from 1462 to 1892 BC, you will see that that is on one birth and one temple, which is one of them. To have both of those days is really rare. So anyway, it's a big leap, but that takes us all the way back, and we'll stop there, I think, for now. Oh, wait a minute, my clock, we still have a couple more minutes. Let's look at the next slide, 128. Yes, now we're back. Okay, we'll talk more about Jacob here, because Jacob's life is really incredible. Jacob lives, the Bible tells us, 147 years. Well, they're Hebrew years, and it comes out exactly even in Venus cycles. So it's 92 Venus cycles. So he dies on one birth, and he was born on one birth. But it's also 3 jubilees. A jubilee is 49 years. 3 times 49 is, I don't even put that on the slide. This is the bonus stuff. 3 times 49 is 147. He lives 3 jubilees, and he dies on Passover. And this is really hard to have the Venus cycle come out exactly even on Passovers. It's very hard to do. And it's also on one storm. One storm is going to tie him to his wife. She's born on one storm, Rachel. And Leah. Rachel and Leah are twins. So this ties to his wife. It ties to his children. I mean, it's hard to do all of that in only 147 years. And it lines up on at least 5 or 6 other holy calendars. So it's absolutely amazing. Let's just look at the next slide and see what it is. And so remember to start there. Okay, yeah, I'll end on this one. We won't even peek at the next one. So his twin wives, it doesn't say twins in the Bible, but it does in the book of Jasher. And by the way, it'll turn out one's born in the morning and the afternoon, so they're on different star days on both of the star calendars. It's really, really cool. And anyway, they are born on the 2nd of March, 1836 BC, on the Feast of Esther, on this calendar, and on the other. Anyway, I won't keep teasing you with all the other calendars yet. Feast of Esther, and that's perfect. It's a female holiday. There's only a few female holy days. Feast of Esther, and they're females, and they're born on a female party day. And they're also born on one birth. Just like Jacob is born and dies on one birth, they're born on one birth. But they're born on one birth when it falls on one storm, and that's Jacob's death date. So they have 2 dates in common, their birth, both with his birth and then doubly on his death. So men are tied to their wives, especially when they're the real wives, if you will. I don't understand exactly all this about this certain couple becomes God's. But the ones who are in the patriarchs, almost all of them, the husband and the wife, their birth and death dates and to their children are all linked really closely. And I can't explain all of the whys and exactly who gets this. I've done studies of regular people, and this happens a lot with what I consider regular people also, where there's links between fathers and children more than you'd expect. I've never done the statistics to prove that it's more than expected by chance. I've wanted to, but I'm still discovering this stuff. Okay, we will stop there on 129 and go on next week. From there, I am remembering, while everybody think of a question, I got one question, and Russell, I'm going to look for that. And if I can go back a few days to it. And otherwise, wait a minute. I get a lot of emails in a week. I should have it already, but I didn't.
Well, I guess I can give it to you.
Yeah, Russell, ask it again. I'm not finding it.
Okay, it says, I see that this next week we'll be talking about several birth dates and how they line up with sacred calendar dates. What are we supposed to learn by these dates being special days? Can we make any conclusions about the dates of the common folk? Are our lives also ordered to have special meaning if we only knew how to read the signs? And then that second paragraph, this would seem to lead into the discussion of astrology. Since the patriarchs' lives are spelled out in the heavens, I can see how astrology could try to do that for everyone. Do you know anything about the start of astrology? Is it just a corrupt form of derived from what was revealed to Enoch? Or is it Satan's counterfeit designed to blind us to the truth that were contained in the heavens?
Okay, I think there's about 3 questions there, and see if I can do them all one at a time. The one question is, this is all wonderful for these amazing patriarchs. How does it apply to us? And I was already touching on that there. I have done a few studies of friends, both sort of spiritual and non-spiritual, and I couldn't discern. I'm trying to get regular people, and I couldn't use myself because I thought the Lord might set stuff up for me, not because I'm cool or special, but just because I'm doing this work, and He wanted me to discover it, because this can happen to random. Anyway, I have in my own life, my son my firstborn son, is born on the same day that I'm born on two different calendars, both the Mercury and the sacred round. And it turns out that only happens on one day in 26 years. It's that rare, just to get those two to line up. And he was born when I was 26 years old on that day. And that just blew me away. It's like, okay, I'm getting this. This works for common everyday people. When you look, let's look at Joseph Smith. You look at Joseph Smith and his brothers and sisters. Hiram, Samuel, his mom, his dad, all of them are born on sacred days on the Hebrew calendar. And these are not dates I'm getting out of my mystical, magical methods. These are written down in history books, and this is the day they're born. They're all on Hebrew holy days. Okay, so this is a special family, but I'm just telling you, it's still used today. That's the answer to that question. For regular people, the studies I've done, it has shown that at the first preliminary indications are that, yes, it works for everybody. There's links between, if not the parents and the children, the grandparents and the children. One that baffled me is one of my children is the same as my brother, and one of his children is the same as me. And that baffled me until I realized, oh, they're both the same as grandpa. So they're not lining up with uncles as much as grandparents. But anyway, so I believe this stuff works for everybody to some degree. Not to the amazing degree of 8 holy days and 5 links the same as with these special people. No, a lot of people are not even born on any holy day. But by the way, my son and I, those were not holy days. They're just the same day. So number one, it does seem to work there to some degree, and this requires a lot of research. I'm still getting the calendar straight, let alone trying to know exactly how statistically probable something is. The other question has to do with astrology. This sounds like astrology. I've said all along that my view is that this is a clock in the sky and it's not controlling us, which is kind of what astrology says. It says, beware of this, and you're born on this, and you have this tendency. I don't line up any of this with tendencies. I do line it up with some kind of predictions, like if you're born on a decision day, that often happens to people who have big decisions to make. So I've gotten that far along there. That sounds a little like astrology. But on the other things, as far as your tendencies, your traits, I don't know anything about any of that. So I'm saying it's mostly a clock, and that God has a clock, and he does these sacred things by his clock, and people don't always know. Just like they planned the conference on holy days, and they didn't know. They just got the only day they could, and it turned out to be a perfect day. Now, the third question on, so what about astrology? My official answer is I have never studied astrology. As a professional astronomer, I was taught to hate astrology. I make the joke that most of the astronomers are atheists, but they all believe that astrology is from the devil. And it's like they believe in the devil, but not God, that kind of a thing. And they have signed papers saying that there can't possibly be anything to it. None of them have studied it. They just throw it out. And they say things like, well, the gravitational forces couldn't be there. Well, now the electric universe is being discovered, and gravity is not the big force. So astrology to me does two things. What little I've seen of it is it says that these planets and the hands, what I call the hands on the clock, actually influence people. And then there's something about predictions too, that lives can be predicted. The people I know who have studied it says it works. I do not reject it because I only reject stuff I've studied and can show doesn't work, and I have no desire. My stuff sounds so much like astrology. I have no desire to actually study astrology too. I've been concerned from the beginning that it would sound like numerology and astrology and things that a lot of people don't take seriously, and other people do. So I don't know if that answers your question. My short answer is I don't know anything about astrology, but I do know that Satan copies everything. I'll tell you that part. And you know that. I used to think astrology was the one thing he copied, that he made up all by himself, and that everything else he copied. And then when I got into it, it's like, oh, he copied that too. Now, what exactly he copied, I don't know, but there seems to be a true part of astrology somewhere, and I've not studied it. Okay, that's too long on that answer. Any other questions? One more thing I'll add to that while you're thinking of another question is God really does know the future, and he can see the future. If you think about the implications of all of this that I'm teaching, he knows. He has, and Joseph Smith has taught this, it's in the scriptures, all things are present before him. He sees the end from the beginning. I've got, I believe, strong evidence here that that's true. Whether it's a day that Noah's letting a dove off the ark, or Covenanters are planning a conference, or your child is born 10 days earlier than expected because the doctor had a trip planned to Hawaii, and so he did it cesarean with some excuse. All of that, your child will be born on the day he's supposed to be born, and link. It is all part of a big plan. There's no surprises for God, from all I can tell. So you can't. So and so then you get into all these problems with free agency. And my answer to that always is, you can remember what you did yesterday, and that doesn't ruin your free agency yesterday. You chose it. You can choose what you do tomorrow, but God can remember it ahead, and he can just see what you're going to do, and it does not influence your agency at all. But it's amazing how this all works. Okay, enough of that. I'll look in the chat box here. See if I can find something. Okay, here we go. A question. When will you release a new version of your calendar program that works on more computers? Oh, that's a good question. I am right now just trying to update my calendar chronology, the one that's done by hand, to be correct, and I'm finishing that. You talk about a release. It should be, when are you going to start on that? And I have had a couple of people volunteer to help me with that. And I've told them I will try to send them, and they would help do it for me. And when I get out a new CD, which should be when I finish this chronology, maybe in a week. I hope it's not more than 2 weeks. Then I'll have a version that should be working, and I can start giving that to other people to work on converting over to a new system. There's 2 parts to it. The one is just to convert my code from Java to JavaScript, but I don't think that's the good way to do it. I should really produce another version. In other words, what I'm contemplating, I could almost do myself without too much trouble. So let's just say it's in the works. I realize there's a need for it. It's got to work on phones. JavaScript works on phones or computers, so that's not a problem. Anyway, it's being worked on. Okay, new question comes up. Oh yeah, Brady Curtis. Okay, Brady, you good. You're not the one. You have volunteered, and I've sort of put you off. The other one, of Yvonne Hughes, is one, and I don't know if you're working. with him. Yeah, I remember you talked about, oh, you've been working on this. I've done all the uniform calendars, about 8 out of 15. It's in Python. Oh, I didn't realize you'd actually started. Well, I haven't given you, I can give you the code. If you're working on it, reverse engineering, I'm happy to give out the source code. But I was just waiting. I was just waiting for a couple of weeks.
John, it's been nice to just kind of do it with a fresh start because it makes me actually learn all the calendars.
Oh, so you're not even converting it; you're just doing it.
Yeah, I mean it's been fun because I have to kind of learn them inside out to kind of code them. So
wow, that's well, okay, yeah, that's a job. There's parts that you'd have real trouble with, but you're right. On the uniform calendars, that's definitely possible. Okay, and in Python, yeah, I haven't programmed in Python. Anyway, I ought to get. I can say real quick here, and then otherwise it should be a private conversation. But instead of actually doing calculations for everyone, for the uniform ones, the way you're doing it, I think is fine. You can do a calculation and it's easy and short. For the other ones where it's very complicated, I could just produce a set of tables with my computer and then have the others just do lookup tables. And that would probably be the quickest and the easiest to go back and forth. I have some calendars where I can't even do the reverse. I can't go back from a date, and that's unacceptable. So anyway, let's not spend more time on it here. I'm working on it, and Brady, keep in touch with me. Email me, john@johnpratt.com, and so that I have you, and I'll try to get you and Vaughn together somehow in case that works. Okay, any other? We got time for just about 3 minutes for another question.
So, John, hey, quick question on time. Calendars, of course, are all about time. God lives in this state where past, present, and future are before him. What does it say in one continual, I guess one continual now? What's your perspective on time as related to calendars, as related to God? Of course, it's relative that we know. What, in 3 minutes, can you kind of give your thoughts about the whole concept of time?
Well, the symbolism, I believe, is used in by the Lord's symbolism is space and time. No, this is not the Lord. This is the theory of physics in which I believe space and time are inverse of each other. Time is, oh boy, 3 minutes.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, I'll go back to the symbols. The serpent feels the ground under him, and he is the symbol of the prophet, and he can't see all over in space. Let's do space instead of time, and then it turns out they're the same. So in space, he can't see ahead or behind in space. He can see the point under him. I'm here. Here's, this is it. That's sort of like us. We're stuck in time. He's stuck in space. The eagle is the serpent. And by the way, he's the symbol of a prophet. The eagle is the serpent of the revelator. The revelator can see the future. He can see the past. He's like God in that way. He can see the past, present, and future, how things were, how they are, how they will be. He can see truth. Truth is like the opposite of light. Light and truth together make intelligence, but they're opposites of each other. Truth is darkness. Female dark is truth. Male is light, white, yin yang. Okay, moving on. The eagle can look down as he's flying high, and he can see the past where he's been. He can see the ground under him where he is, and he can see the future where he's going. It's just laid out in front of him. To me, that's how it is with God, with time. Exactly the same. He can see the time ahead, underneath, behind, and we're down stuck. We're like floating in this river we call time, and all we can do is see where the boat is right here, and everything in the river is flowing together. So we think we're at rest in a river. God can see where the river's flowing, where we're going, where we've been. That's the best analogy I can do
Okay.
in 3 minutes. So there you go. All righty. I think we are all set. It's 8:45. So that was a pretty good, we covered quite a bit there. Good session. So we'll go from there. Start on 1:30 next time.
All right. Well, thanks, John, as always. Thanks, everyone, for joining, and we'll have all of the recording up in the next day or so that you could refer back to if you need to. Thanks, everybody. See you next week.